The Retirement Chef, whipping up wealth with Brian Butler. He's a CEO and senior wealth advisor. And let's get into this next topic when it comes to retirement strategies, cooking techniques. These investment strategies. Tell me a little bit about kind of that difference between the slow cooker and pressure cooker way of going about your retirement plan.
No, absolutely. I love the analogies and comparisons of retirement planning and investments with cooking because their similarities are just uncanny. Yeah. So when you're looking at a long-term investment strategy, it's the same thing as a slow cooker. Yeah. When you put that roast in the morning, it takes forever for it to cook. But once it's done, you have a great dish. And the same thing with long-term investing. Time in the market is a proven strategy that has the potential to get you where you want to be from an investment standpoint and an income standpoint. So these are some of the things that we attempt to put into place because historically they've done their job. They've made a great dish for you when you get ready to retire or save for that major lifestyle goal. And the slow cooker, is it sexy? No. Is it easy? It can be. There's not a whole lot of technique that it takes. And the longer you're in the market, the higher probability of success you have, depending on your allocation and whatnot. And so slow cooker, I love it. The dishes come out great. They take a long time, but if you plan properly, you'll be ahead of the game. Now, when you don't have that much time, and you still want that good dish, well, you got to implement a new technique.
Sure.
Now, the pressure cooker is one of my favorite tools in the kitchen. Just because when we get home and we don't know what we want to eat, and of course, when you get home and you finally figure it out, the dish that you really, really want is going to take 8 hours.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't want to wait 8 hours for this dish. But the pressure cooker allows you to speed that process up and still come out with a good dish. It's a completely different tool. And the one I use at home is the Instant Pot.
Yeah.
I love that thing. I use it so much. So we were trying to make a Mississippi pot roast.
Okay.
And we put it in the pressure cooker, threw everything in and just turn it on. An hour and a half later, we had a great dish. Now, was the slow cooker better or was the pressure cooker better? They came out about the same. And it's just a matter of your time frame and your risk tolerance when it comes to investing. Sure. Do you want to be the low and slow? What is it? The tortoise?
Yeah. The tortoise and the hare. Yeah.
Yeah. Or do you need to be the hare? Yeah. So the longer you have, the better chances are you don't necessarily need to mess with the pressure cooker. But from an investment standpoint, understanding how in retirement standpoint, understanding your timeline and understanding the types of investments that you want makes all the difference in the world. And that's where we come in to really evaluate that and tie it to what your particular goals are. Sometimes people don't realize that all their investments are in the pressure cooker. They're all high risk, high reward investments because they are familiar with them. Many times people will work for a company for 30 or 40 years, and that company is highly concentrated in one sector. We have a ton of those. We have energy, we have healthcare. So if you're only invested 80% of your money into energy stocks and one energy stock being your company,
sure,
you're in the pressure cooker. Even though your emotions and true intentions should be in the slow cooker. And how do we match those up to where you can really get where you want comfortably and really show you how it makes sense for you to diversify your assets?
So let me ask you this. When you look at the stock market right now, because a lot of people feel like it's got some volatility going on right now. Obviously, you see numbers and you see, oh my gosh, we hit 40,000, in the stock market. And then when you dive in a little bit more, you'll hear a lot of the investment people, whatever you're watching on TV will tell you, well, the Magnificent Seven are the ones that really kind of propping everything up on the S&P 500, for example. But are those particular investments part of that slow cooker recipe, or are they more part of that pressure cooker recipe when you got a lot of the tech stocks that kind of seem to be very volatile right now?
And this is where the diversification comes in. You can have some of those pressure cooker assets. What makes the pressure in your investment portfolio more concentrated is the concentration of that particular position. So if the only stocks that you own in that portfolio are the Magnificent Seven, okay, now you're in the pressure cooker.
Yeah.
But if you have those in addition to some diversification through passive management, through active management, through bonds, it can release some of the pressure on that portfolio. So all of a sudden, even though those particular investments are what's moving the market the most, you may have some other investments and opportunities that move it forward, but just not as at fast of a pace as those tech areas. So just because something's not moving at the same speed or pressure as those particular Magnificent Seven, you can diversify and go at a slower pace. And then when you blend all of that, you come up with the right mix.
You know, I love this slow cooker versus pressure cooker analogy, because when you think about it, you know, if you throw something into a crock pot, you can almost walk away from it, right? Yeah. You can come back in 4 hours and 6 hours and 8 hours, and you know, man, it's going to be pretty good, regardless of when you come back, right?
Right.
But when you throw something in that pressure cooker, you are kind of, you know, you kind of need to watch it. You got to pay attention. You can overdo it. And if you overdo it, there's it puts you in a much more distasteful kind of position if you've overdone it one way or the other in a pressure cooker. And that's kind of the whole idea here.
No, absolutely. This is the importance of having partnership when it comes to your retirement and to your investments, because if all your money is in the pressure cooker, you can make a ton. But at the same token, you could lose a ton. So high risk, high reward. And pressure cookers can be dangerous. So I've seen them blow up. If you go on YouTube and type up exploding pressure cooker, they can be extremely dangerous if not used properly in the proper situations by people who understand what they're for and how to use them. And so it's the same thing when you concentrate all your funds into a particular position. It can, shoot to the moon, or it can go right to the basement, and everything in between. So just understanding that when you apply your investment technique and really allocating it properly. Asset allocation is just where you put the money. Just like food. What are you cooking in the pressure cooker versus what are you cooking in the slow cooker? You can cook things like meats in the pressure cooker, but if you cooked a bunch of vegetables in the pressure cooker for too long, it just becomes a mess that you don't want. So just understanding the right recipe for that particular retirement. And that's why these analogies work so well, to just simplify it and demystify some of the jargon that you see on investment news, and especially during the times that we're in now, political news. How do you make sure that you're going to be okay?
Well, let's go to the next part, which is the sautéing and simmering way of looking at investing. I know that, this has to do with active and passive types of investments. Explain kind of the biggest difference between those two ways of cooking up your retirement.
These two, active versus passive, sautéing versus simmering, are almost as bad as religion and politics when it comes to the investment world. You have the camps that love active management. They're always looking for opportunities that are rotating from one sector to another to find the best strategies to fit. Then you have the passive people that are very analytical, that show statistics over time that show, okay, if we're passive and just invest in some strong areas in the market and leave it alone, we can do great things. And so sautéing is, you're looking for that opportunity. You're doing it quickly, trying to get that reward. That's a lot of times what active management is. And simmering is the passive. We're going to let it slow, simmer, cook, let those flavors blend together and build something great. Now, which one's right? It depends on the situation. And
Sure,
so,
yeah.
depending on what you're trying to do and whether those funds are now, in the future, or, for the next generation, how do you prepare your dish using the right techniques for your particular investment portfolio? So active versus passive is a debate that probably will never end.
Yep.
But a lot of times people want a little bit of both. They want to see that they're taking advantage of opportunities in the market, that they're seeing something on the news, that they have a little bit of skin in the game. And it's okay if the majority of their portfolio is passive. A lot of times people are leaning that way, but they also want a little spice to it. They want a little pizzazz. And so if you can do that, making the client happy while still getting them where they want to be, it's an amazing thing to see.
When it comes to the sautéing and simmering analogy with this, and this is one of those situations too, where having someone who is a financial professional really helping you with this is really a good idea for nothing other than you might have certain dishes or certain foods, not dishes necessarily, but certain foods that could be sautéed or they could simmer.
Right.
Depending on what you're looking to get out of that particular food and what kind of dish you're trying to create. And that takes some attention from whoever it is that you're working with to make sure that we're sautéing versus simmering or simmering versus sautéing, right?
No, absolutely. And it's a matter of time too.
Yeah.
So anytime when you're cooking, some of the things that we've talked about, the pressure cooker, the slow cooker, sautéing versus simmering, those are all components of time that they're very time dependent. So sautéing can be quick, so can pressure cooking. Simmering takes a little bit longer, so does slow cooking. And it's the same thing with the investments. How do you ensure that the investments are doing what you want them to do? And looking at it from a holistic standpoint, understanding that and seeing how they all work together, when you step back, you can say, oh, I see how all of these are coming together for me, and I see what I need to accomplish. So time is the biggest thing that people are paying attention to or need to pay attention to.
When it comes to some of these different analogies that we're talking about, I imagine many people, because this is such a great way to kind of compare both how investing, how your retirement planning does relate to something like being a chef in the kitchen. We live in a world now where instant gratification is it's like a top priority for so many different people. Which is, listen, that's why the Instapot became so popular there for a while. But you have to be patient, right? To be able to make sure you're doing the right way of preparing these dishes or preparing your retirement plan. And Brian, this kind of takes us into that baking aspect. And I bring this one up when I'm talking about that instant gratification, because you don't want to wait. You're excited, right? You're excited for the cookies to come out of the oven,
right?
and so make sure you don't pull them out too quickly, because they might not be done yet. But so many of us, we get into that place of like, but I want it now, and we'll almost look for a reason or a way to make it happen right now, even though that may not be the best way to go about things.
Well, baking is truly a way to look at a retirement plan,
right?
Because baking takes specific measurements, specific time, specific temperature. So how much risk are you wanting to take? How much time are you willing to put into it?
Yeah, invest into it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then how much is what's the total amount of money you have, which is the amount of ingredients that you can add to this particular dish. So when you take into account all of that, you can't rush it. Right. So if you try to make a cake and you want to get it done even quicker, and you crank the oven up to 500, 600 degrees, well, that cake's going to be ruined. Yeah. And just the same token, if you're like, I don't want to take that much risk, and I have a long time that I could bake the cake, I'm going to put it in the morning on 200 degrees and see what happens, it's going to be ruined.
Sure.
So finding the right balance is what your retirement plan is. Is how do you piece together all these techniques, all of these ingredients for what you're trying to accomplish in a way that you can emotionally handle it. A lot of people
Right.
don't take that into account, because when I cook for people, it's an emotional thing. I enjoy it while I'm doing it, and I enjoy seeing their faces. But the level of disappointment if you mess up a dish, you never want to see that. And so when you use all of these different techniques for the particular situations that clients are coming for, you have to ask, what's your time frame? What are your assets that you have for this? And then how much risk are you willing to take? And how much time are you willing to give it to work? Things are going to happen, and you can make adjustments. So if you're just like in baking, if you're missing a little bit of buttermilk, what can you do? You can make some adjustments. You can add a little vinegar to regular milk. And so you can keep moving forward. So that's where the optimism I have with this country and retirement planning, you always have to be optimistic so you can see the opportunities that are there. Because if you're just missing something, well, you might have something that can make it almost as good. And if you keep moving forward, that opportunity, you can make a great dish or have a great retirement.
I love it, man. You do such a great job, Brian, of kind of explaining the ideas of how a retirement plan should really come together, the way that a great dish or whatever it may be in the kitchen comes together. And so much of the way that you explain it, and this is the part I love the most, is the way that it's a parallel when it comes to the different ingredients, when it comes to time, when it comes to temperature, when it comes to even just the way that you want to prepare a dish. This is the way that your investments are going to work. This is the way that your retirement portfolio is going to work as well. And when I look at and I see the care and diligence that I know that you put into the dishes you may be preparing for dinner, it really kind of gives me an idea of, I'll bet he kind of looks at the retirement planning the same way, so that I'm kind of, I'm waiting to sit at the table now to see what you're going to serve up, because it's an exciting way to look at things. And the optimism is something that I think most people need to really, there's a time right now when there's so much negativity going on in the world, right? There is uncertainty. At the same time, if we're focusing on the things that could go wrong in the kitchen, then there's a great chance that we may miss something that could be a golden opportunity to maybe create something that you've never had before that might just be the best dish you've ever had, right?
Absolutely. Being open to it, being open to what's out there and the opportunities is what I like about cooking and what I like about retirement planning. And when you're able to do that for people, you see it on their face that I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah.
When you see that, it's like, oh, it's great.
It's interesting, and I'll kind of wrap us up on this episode with this one kind of thought, right? And it's kind of like if you're in the kitchen and you are trying to figure out what you're going to do for dinner tonight, right? Some of the greatest meals will come from the idea of, I forget, I know that there's a term for it, and I'll bet you probably know what it is, but it's basically figure out what you have in the pantry and create something out of it. Right. And so knowing that that's what you have to work with, that's kind of how we are right now when it comes to everything that's on people's minds. Well, this is what we have to work with. We can look at it from one of two directions, and we can say, well, I guess we just won't eat tonight. Right? And instead, you kind of look at it as an opportunity that regardless of how negative things may feel or be, there's always opportunity somewhere in every situation.
No, 100%, because the things that we have going on from a political standpoint, from a world global standpoint, and how do people fit into that, it's definitely shows people there's an opportunity just to see what's out there and figuring out what's the right mix is. Because no matter who's in office or what's going on in the globe, there's always opportunity. There's always people making money and thriving. And it's the people that that are open to that opportunity and can make adjustments as needed. It just reminds me of that show on is it HGT on the Food Network?
Okay.
Give them a basket of ingredients and say, go, figure it out. That's kind of where we are, from a political situation, what's going on with the presidency. You don't know. So you can't make a dish until you know what the ingredients are, what the rules are going to be, who's going to be in office, and how that particular policy is going to affect your retirement. You have to wait and see.
You know what? That's a great way to look at it, because if you look at some of the things that have happened just over the last couple of weeks, it's literally as if he came along and said, oh, by the way, we're going to take that one out of the basket. You don't get to use that one. And you're like, well, hold on just a minute. I was counting on that. Well, unfortunately, you have to,
100%.
figure it out moving forward.
100%.
You got to have the right attitude to go into that. Reach out to everyone at Wealth Standard Financial. The website is wealthstandardfinancial.com. Again, wealthstandardfinancial.com. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. It's a great thing to listen to and kind of get your ducks in a row when it comes to your retirement, the same way that you got to figure out what's going to be going on in your kitchen. We encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure that you have the notifications turned on so you can get, know when that content is coming out, know when the next recipe is coming for your retirement plan. So, Brian,
all right,
thanks so much, man, and we'll talk to you next time.
The opinions voiced in The Retirement Chef, Whipping Up Wealth with Brian Butler, are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on The Retirement Chef, Whipping Up Wealth are not affiliated with CWM LLC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.